It is late. I'm drinking what my dear friend calls a poor man's Long Island iced tea, which is a store-bought Arnold Palmer and copious amounts of vodka. I've done a lot of driving today, trying to get errands done, and it reminded me of something I do my best to not think about. Not to forget, mind you. Forgetting is dangerous. Just to not dwell on. My state is crisscrossed by dozens of highways. In my area, largely backwoods though it may be, you're never more than half an hour away from one. Even so, the older country roads are how you get around. They're often quicker if you're not trying to visit a city, and there's much less traffic. If you're the solitary type, the relative isolation is a welcome chance to decompress while enjoying the scenery. Avoiding the highways isn't without its drawbacks. The country roads twist without warning, occasionally narrow unexpectedly, and seem to attract animals without nothing better to do than wander out in the middle of the road at the most inconvenient moment. These are the risks that you just absorb if you grow up in the area. Watch for flashing eyes on the side of the road. Go 5 under the speed limit unless you've been down this way before, and you should be fine. Except it's dark as hell on these no streetlights back roads at night, cutting through nothing but farmland and forested areas that haven't been clear cut yet. And sometimes people turn on their brights, the high beams if you like, to improve their visibility. These same geniuses never seem to remember to turn off their brights when they see somebody coming the opposite way, or when they're zooming along behind another car. As long as they can see better, who gives a damn about blinding anybody else on the road, I guess. These offensively oblivious drivers are invariably from out of town. You can just tell from the sheer fact that these dimwits have their brights on at all. Locals don't drive with their brights on at night. Sure, we claim it's because we've been here our whole lives, so we don't need to. But we're full of shit. We don't drive with our brights on because we know what we'll see. Years ago, I moved about 15 miles away from my hometown for college. It was the furthest away that my family and I could afford. I wasn't aiming to stay close to home, if you catch my drift, but close enough that I knew some of the back roads in the surrounding area. For the first year, if I had to travel at night, I stuck to those roads in the better lit main streets of that college town, since I'm constantly terrified of getting lost or stranded. I didn't own a smartphone at the time, and I didn't even have a GPS, and my car is pretty old. So at the time, getting stranded in miles of farmland was a very real fear for me. Actually, I think that fear is universal for every person who grows up in a town where there are more farms and bars, and not just me. Last year, I started dating a woman who lived a couple towns away. I could get to her place from mine in 25 minutes, if I took a route that included cutting all the way through my own college town, and hopping on a road that was actually part of an interstate. Or I could get there in 10 if I took a single back road that led right to the back of her development. When you're young, dumb, and in love, every minute counts, so when I would spend the night at her place, I would work up the courage to take the shorter route, secretly terrified I'd break down or get lost on the way. I never did, but the unfamiliar roads unnerved me after dark. I loved the nighttime, but I never liked that particular kind of darkness that settles on strange less traveled roads after sundown. It always made me worry that something might see me, might take interest in me, and might follow me home. In order to ward off that post-sunset paranoia, I took to turning on my high beams on during my trip to my girlfriend's house. Unlike the other jackasses that I sometimes saw, I would always dim them once another vehicle was in eyeshot. But the increased visibility helped me ward off the nerves, you know? Even after I knew the way well enough, I would just keep my brights on, and I started doing it on late night drives to other destinations too, so long as I was taking the back roads. You know how you sometimes mistake ordinary things for terrifying ones for a split second when you drive at night? I hated those moments of terror, and I discovered that turning on my brights kept them away. The warm glow of my high beams warded off the shadows that turned telephone poles into 20-foot-tall preachers leaning over my car. Their wide berth ensured that the decrepit street signs stayed street signs, and never metamorphosized for a moment into a hooded figure. Eventually things ended between that girl and I, but I still flicked on my high beams when night fell, if I had to pick up a drunk Uberless friend from a party in the woods or grab milk from the gas station a few miles away from my apartment. It was just a habit at that point. It made things so much easier. I noticed my friends from other states, even other counties in my own state, did the same thing at night. I wondered why none of the countless adults who had driven me countless miles on countless nights ever turned their high beams on, as far as I could recall, or had even told me that it was an option when I was learning to drive. I chalked it up just to classic podunk stupidity and I carried on. Hardly anybody in my area had upgraded from dial-up either, until it was practically impossible not to. I was an idiot. It started with the shadows creeping back in. It was strange. I'd think that I saw a nebulous something by the side of the road, but by the time it had registered, I was already 200 feet away with the rearview showing nothing but empty space, and I wasn't about to risk a crash by craning my neck around to check my blind spot. I figured that it was just normal, that my brain was used to the brights being on now, and therefore was starting to conjure up the same old momentary phantoms as it did when I only used headlights to drive at night. And then there were the deer. I was driving home from a late night of working on campus when I saw the familiar yellow-green flash of deer lights near the shoulder. I slowed immediately, counting 5 pairs of eyes, and sure enough, one was approaching the road. An adolescent doe trapezed out of the woods, and I watched her meander directly in front of the car, stop and stare me right in the face. Plucky of her. A couple more young deer followed her to the other side of the road, but I waited, knowing that I had seen 2 more pairs of eyes. A small deer stumbled out of the woods and I noticed with a twinge in my chest that its front left leg was buckling unnaturally. I suspected that it would unfortunately probably die soon. At the very least, I thought maybe I could call my local animal clinic. The vets sometimes did help wild animals. I had taken a crow with a limp wing to her before and she had worked wonders. And give her a heads up that there was a wounded deer in the vicinity in case somebody else was able to find it and call it in, for all the good that would do. But my thoughts trailed off as I realized the 5th deer was nowhere to be found. That was no good. I didn't want the little bastard popping out in front of me 30 yards up the road and giving us both a fright, or worse. Had the 5th deer decided to split from the others, turned around and walked further into the woods. I scanned the road and both shoulders again carefully, as the deer retreated into the woods on my right side. If my brights weren't on, I never would have caught it, and I would sleep far easier at night now. At the very edge of my high beam's reach, on the forested left shoulder where the deer had come from, I spotted the last pair of yellow-green eyes reflecting my lights back. It was the right height for a buck, and it had antlers so tall that they caught in the tree limbs, but it was not a deer. Deer don't have long, thin, matted fawn-colored hair on top of a head that would be human if not for its eerily reflective eyes. Deers are herbivores, and would have no reason for a bloodied mouth and a neck. It froze just like a deer would. I froze just like a deer would. In that terrible moment, I realized those antlers were not caught in tree limbs. Not caught at all, but draped in something, like some sick celebratory streamers. I have never been hunting, but I've seen enough anatomy textbooks to know what intestines look like. I couldn't even manage a scream. The thing that was not a deer stumbled away from the road, and the last detail that broke me was something about how its legs moved. It just seemed wrong, unnatural, even given the rest of this horrific picture. Only after a few seconds did I realize its long legs bent backwards. And that did it for me. I'm not sure why, but it did. The image of this thing's gangly limbs bending the wrong way sent me speeding off. I was terrified that it would chase me, and I nearly crashed twice on the way home from keeping my eyes locked on my rearview. But I didn't see it scrambling after me. I don't remember getting into my apartment or turning on all the lights at 1:30, or shutting all the blinds or barricading the door with a chair. I don't remember drinking half a bottle of cheap vodka either, but that definitely sounds in character. I come from good white trash stock. When we see something we don't know how to explain or deal with, we drink ourselves into oblivion and never talk about it until we're on our deathbeds, and we can foist off that secret to the least favorite grandchild, thereby clearing our conscience for the grave and ensuring this wicked cycle lasts another generation. When one of my roommates found me, wanting to know why the hell every light in the house was on and did I want a utility bill the size of God's ass, I was in the bathtub with all my clothes on and the water running, clutching the half-empty vodka bottle and staring at the bathroom wall. My roommate got me out of the tub and got the whole sorry slurred story out of me, but I don't know how much they understood. I don't know if she believes me or if she thinks that I had some kind of hallucinatory episode, or if she thinks that it was just something I had said in a drunken stupor. I didn't drive for 3 days. I didn't drive at night for another 8. I didn't call the police or animal control or the folks back in Georgewood. I called the vet to warn her, and not only that there was a deer I had seen with a leg that looked funky, and that she might get a call in the future, but that I had seen a bear the same night, and yes, it was strange that a bear would come so near to the road. But still, she should be careful if somebody managed to trap the injured deer and asked her to come retrieve it. Like a damn fool, when I finally drove at night again, I kept my brights on. I thought that the lights would scare off whatever I had stumbled upon. I guess I needed one more lesson to really get it, to really understand. When on my way to a late night diner I like to go to when I can't sleep, I saw the deer corpse being fed on by some obscenely obscurely tall rail-thin man, wearing what looked unnervingly like a clerical collar. And I knew. And as soon as his head turned to look at my car, I sped up and I flicked my brights off. For many nights after that, I couldn't sleep without traveling down a dark road with my brights on. My car would inevitably stall, still lighting up the way ahead, and both shoulders of the road would come alive with glowing eyes and sick sucking sounds. I could not drive at night without my radio turned up all the way for 3 months. Until finally, blessedly, I slept a week without that nightmare, and I felt the oppressive gaze of whatever had taken an interest in me turn away. I don't think it means to harm me, not exactly. Not if I mind my own damn business. I mentioned to my mother on my weekly phone call shortly after that I had been using my brights recently. I think I was trying to gauge her reaction or trying to get one at all. I got what I wanted. For a moment, she said nothing. I thought that I had heard her breath hitch in her throat. I stopped though. I added, my throat hurting strangely as I said it, like I was choking back the truth. She said nothing still, and for a moment longer. The silence stretched out before us, almost longer than that damn preacher thing's lanky body. Finally, in a cool, detached voice, she told me, "That's good, Pumpkin," and informed me that she had to leave to get back to work. I still see shadows at night. I think everybody does. I do my best to keep my eyes on the road and communicate utter disinterest. There are many mysteries about my birthplace I would like somebody to solve someday. But after the weeks that I spent feeling like the darkness of the road itself was fixing to swallow me up, Uncovering the nature of whatever things we share the country back ways with after nightfall is not high on that list. When you find yourself on a back road in some godforsaken do-nothing state, please drive slow. Don't use your brights. Do your very best not to notice anything on the side of the road out here. I don't want it to notice you back.